Can you tell me about ShiftWell's fundamental philosophy? And I know you chose the name very intentionally too. What's the shift in ShiftWell that we really need to make in terms of changing our mindset or our behaviors or maybe everything?
With ShiftWell, we look at the whole person. And I think somewhere along the way in the corporate world, we forgot that it takes more than just our career ambitions to help us be at our best. So this is what we help do. We essentially just identify what are the gaps that are very specific to each individual that they can identify, and how can they move those gaps in whichever way for them to actually be at their best in that particular element, is what we call it. We assess them on 6 different elements. This is where AI can help. It's not replacing that support necessarily. It's an additional partner for you to go to for when you want somebody to keep you accountable. That's what tools are for, to help us with consistency, accountability, nudging. No human in the world, unless it's your mom, partner, or significant other, right, model the behavior you want to see. I think that is the biggest thing for managers, for leaders, and that's the hardest. And I mean, I'm still learning myself all the time. That's the hardest one, because we have to walk the talk. And I think the best way to help people grow, especially if you want to develop further leaders in your team, is to show them what good leadership is like. Model that behavior, I think, is number one, right?
My very special guest is a global talent development expert, speaker, and co-founder of ShiftWell.ai, a human-centered performance and well-being platform. She has over 15 years of experience spanning higher education, corporate learning, and entrepreneurship. She helps individuals and organizations unlock growth through practical, neuroscience-backed strategies. She is Elena Agaragimova. Welcome to the show, Elena.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's so great to see you again. We had a quick conversation. I've just learned a little bit about yourself, your background, about ShiftWell, and I can't wait to have today's conversation.
Me too. Me too. Let's dive in.
We'll dive in by recognizing that you've got this tremendous and diverse array of experiences that's kind of brought you to this opportunity that you're working on now. You've worked in talent development, I saw, across 14 different countries and 3 continents. That is, you're a well-traveled person in that way. And I just wonder, from that global base and that deep perspective that you have, what are some of the most critical, either performance-related or workforce-related issues that you've seen organizations struggle with? That's a great place for us to get started.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, it's something that throughout my travels in general, it only comes together afterwards. You don't ever go look and you're like, I wonder what they're dealing with. And I wonder, and like you deliver your sessions and then you just kind of move on. And when people ask me this question, I really come to the conclusion that at the end of the day, it's very similar challenges across board, because we're just dealing with people. And some of those challenges include, our middle managers across we're talking about corporates, kind of corporate environments in different parts of the world, right? Middle managers are overworked, overwhelmed, managing more people than ever before. I think that's pretty standard across board. I think generally speaking, we're doing more with less as organizations across board. The work pace is just so fast in terms of deliverables, in terms of timelines, in terms of just innovation that's expected, growth that's expected, business outcomes that are expected. I think I see this across board. And finally, just the talent, the general talent gaps, right, in the marketplace. And again, depending on the region and so on, I don't want to make it super generalized, but talent gaps do exist in most places around the world and companies.
It's almost unfair. I mean, we see that we're having such a drain on that middle management layer in particular. I find a lot of times that they're sandwiched between this executive appetite for growth, as you mentioned, and the fact that we've been constrained really for 5+ years at this point. And now there's this appetite to take advantage of AI adoption or shift our business models. Consumer demands keep changing and their preferences. And we're asking more and more of a layer of the organization that's increasingly depleted almost.
Yeah, and it's, what's another kind of disturbing thing is that we're also, at least what I see in the market, when companies reach out to me to do trainings or, some kind of consulting work, you realize how little effort is put into actually effectively training those managers and providing them the training. Usually it's a training that goes something like this. So, Elena, we need you to come in. We need you to focus on this topic. We have 2 days and we need you to transform the organization, right? So that's kind of like, in a nutshell, that's kind of the request that you would get as a trainer, as a facilitator. And you're like, okay, wonderful. Let's back up a little bit. What are we actually trying to solve, right? And a lot of us like, oh, well, our manager's overwhelmed and we want to do better. And we need to teach people how to lead, how to people manage, not just be executors of tasks, but how do they people manage? And I think that's like the biggest kind of symptom of a system that's not working, is like, if that's what you come with, like, let's back up, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, you don't need a consultant, you need a magician. That's what you need. Yeah.
A magician.
It's one of those things, but it's surprising to me because we've had engagement surveys for decades. We've got wellness programs everywhere, but it doesn't seem that all of this kit, if you will, all of these techniques, they're really working. Like, why are we still coming up short when we're throwing, in some ways, some things at the problem? Maybe not as much leadership development as we'd like, but we're trying. Why is it not sticking?
Well, for starters, we're measuring the wrong things. We've been measuring I think engagement surveys solve a particular maybe challenge, a problem in terms of, whatever the company wants to look at, but it's not solving. We're putting band-aids on broken legs, and we're doing them because we're like, we want to make sure our employees, think that we care, and maybe we do care. Maybe the intention is there, right? For most companies, the intention is good when they do engagement surveys, but engagement surveys are, the way they're worded is not, it's not really effective. What they're measuring is not really effective. And also, it's just one time per year that we're doing this. We're getting like a feeling from the employee versus actual facts around specific areas that we need to be concerned with as a company. I'll actually tell you something that is, this is live right now. So we're doing a little audit for organizations, and I'll share with you audit in terms of employee insights to action. So we're asking companies like HR leaders, we're asking them, hey, what are you measuring? Who gets the results? How are action implemented? And and this will actually give you a good idea of what's happening in the market, because I think this is so spot on. So some of the questions we ask, for example, is like, what do they assess? What do companies assess? Most of the answers we've gotten so far is something that focuses on work. We assess the way that person works, for example, something career related, right? Then we ask, okay, when you look at, how do you actually assess engagement and performance? This is also done only once a year for most companies. Some of the better companies out there do it 4 times a year. But then, most of us still do it only annually. Then we look at okay, well, who actually, you get this data from your employees, but who actually gets that data and reporting? And most of the people answered that it's really just the senior executives and the leadership that get the data. So not even often the middle managers that need it the most, and also not the employees. And so to kind of wrap this up for you is, at the end of the day, we're measuring the wrong thing. Number one, things have changed. We've been doing engagement surveys for a long time. Since we started engagement surveys, things have shifted in the way that we work and what people want from work, and how an employee, there's a lot of research that came out in terms of what is actually driving human performance in a workplace. But our tools that we use have not adjusted. So I think that's the fundamental challenge that we're facing.
It seems like, we have room for improvement. Let's take a positive spin on it at pretty much every turn. And it's amazing to me that so much of business, as you pointed out, has changed, but the way we approach managing people really hasn't. I think that we still do too little investment in our managers and our leadership development. Like you said, the tools and even the data we collect more data than ever, but we don't necessarily set it up actionably, and we don't get it to the people who could benefit from it. And it's like, why has our people function not really evolved in the same and kept pace, I would say, with all the other changes? That if you think about your life as a consumer or even an employee inside an organization, in terms of your functional job, you're using an entirely different tech stack. You're awash in data. You can get customization, personalization, everything. But then when it looks to how we actually lead the people functions, there's no evidence of that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the HR and L&D professionals, in this space, I think they understand, and I think they're trying to make that change, and the intent is there. It's just, one, there's just also an overflow of information. So like, where do you even start, and what do you start measuring? And this is kind of what we talk about. This is what, of course, Jordana, who's my business partner, this is what she spent years researching, is actually understanding what is it that employees need? How do we actually help our team members be better and just, be great at what they do, right? Like in a way that works for them. And same thing for HR and L&D professionals. Like, it's just really pausing. I think that's where we are. We need a pause. We need just like a collective pause, and just to look at, what are we measuring? What are we actually doing with that data? what do we actually want to measure based on the new research and data and literature that's available, and also asking our employees, like actually asking them what is it that they need the most to be at their best, and that answer is going to be very different, which is where tools come in, because you can't ask every single person, but you can use tools that help you gather that data and provide the support that people need.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly powerful. And as you know, Jordana was on a webinar that I hosted recently, and we had asked the audience, this is a ton of HR professionals, like, what is it that's preventing you from being able to have a bigger impact on the business, basically? And a lot of it came down to time. Just, it seems like, we need to hit that pause button, and it takes a lot of discipline to do that. It's very scary to hit the pause button and say, hold on a second. We need to be strategic here for a minute. We need to fall back and decide, like, are we measuring the right things? Are we giving and preparing data and sharing it with people in a way that they can find actionable? So I think your instincts there are absolutely spot on based on, what I hear every day.
Yeah, and I think also to add to that, I think we also need to be able to communicate that effectively to leadership, and I see that shift happening as well. So HR L&D professionals are moving away from being like a task taker to now a consultant, to somebody who sits at the table, and I love to see that change, and we see it more and more. And I think if I'm in that position, this is what I would double down on, is actually continuing to have those conversations with my leadership, so that when I do take a pause, I'm not afraid that they're going to ask me, well, what have you been doing, type thing, right? Because I think that's the fear. And it's like, no, things have changed. We talked about this. And here's how we're going to change and adapt with the timing. So I think that's another part of it, right? Is because we're already a function that people really, put like a microscope to. And I think we feel like if we're not just continually producing and doing what we're asked to do, there's also an element of fear. And I think this is where relationships and the conversation with the senior leadership in your company really can play a role.
So you've been leading talent functions for a while. You've had previous startup experience. Can you take me back to that moment when you're like, we need a solution here. We need to ultimately develop what became ShiftWell. Like, what were you seeing in the environment, the landscape, if you will, that we've been talking about here, that's like, no, we need to take a very specific approach and start something new here?
Yeah, so it's been years in the making, honestly. And, I'll just kind of go back to, in full transparency, when I first was entering the workforce, I was so lost in terms of my career. I took the hard road. I did, I had a ton of jobs in my career, early in my career, really experimented a lot. And I was just so lost, like as an individual, like contributor in a team, right? I didn't always have the support that I would need from a manager, for example. I did some, but not all companies. And then I got into management roles, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And it was just like chaos. And I was like, what is going on? And so, by force, almost because of the situation, I was forced to really spend a lot of time on personal development, career development, and I kind of fell into that world, right? And then I realized as I continued to grow in my career, I was like, oh, and then especially when I did consulting, I was like, a lot of people don't invest in that. A lot of companies don't spend time on that. A lot of people don't realize that there's a different way to lead and manage and etc. And so that was kind of the first, like, okay, so actually it's not a common sense thing, and people are not doing it, just like I was forced into it. And so that was my first thing. And then when I started being in L&D roles and really just working with different companies and starting to see how things function, and I'm like, oh, this is really expensive for you guys. Number one, you're spending a lot of money. There's no ROI. That's like the first thing you would hear all the time about learning and development. It's like ROI. There's none. Well, yeah, because we're measuring the wrong things. We don't know what to do with that. Like you said, going back to that data, and then we don't know how to actually help people change behaviors. And part of it is because it's also going back to time. We cannot possibly do that, right? It's just, you just got too much going on. And so anyway, so that was kind of that was another part of me where I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And then you start to realize that a lot of solutions out there are just putting band-aids on broken legs. And this is where, through my work, and also obviously I'm part of a team, it's not just me, and with my work with my partners, we really kind of came together and realized, like, I think we have a solution, and this is ShiftWell. And that's kind of how it all came together. And the more, that's been a year now, and the more we're growing it and the more we're communicating with clients and so on, we start to realize that it's actually solving things.
You're my favorite kind of people, because you say, enough's enough. We're not going to put up with this anymore. There is a way to approach this, to solve this problem, which is really powerful. And I love the pioneering spirit of the startup in that way. And I know in our earlier conversation, you had mentioned to me that a real goal for ShiftWell is to help people be at their best, which I love because we see so many times there's so many things preventing us from being at our best. But can you tell me about ShiftWell's fundamental philosophy? And I know you chose the name very intentionally too. What's the shift in ShiftWell that we really need to make in terms of changing our mindset or our behaviors or maybe everything?
Absolutely. So with ShiftWell, we look at the whole person. So, unlike employee engagement surveys, which again play their own role, and unlike personality assessment and unlike leadership assessments, we really look at the human being as a whole. And I think somewhere along the way, in the corporate world, we forgot that it takes more than just our career ambitions to help us be at our best. So this is what we help do. We essentially just identify what are the gaps that are very specific to each individual that they can identify, and how can they move those gaps in whichever way, everybody's different, for them to actually be at their best in that particular element, is what we call it. We assess them on 6 different elements. So how can you maximize on each element that matters to you? And that element is different for every single person. And we know, again, over the years, we can see the research coming out that when we're thriving at work, when we're having good days at work, it is because other things are in balance, such as our environment, where we work, how we work, the connections we have with our team members, with the companies, the values that are aligned with the work that the company does, right? And so on. And of course, the career ambitions and all those other things. But it's like looking at the holistic person and then helping them identify gaps in terms of what is it they actually need. So a lot of tools out there will just tell you like, hey, like here's where you are, good luck. Or the company will have to spend like $300-400 per session per executive coach to kind of debrief. And it's not happening. And so that was the whole aim of ShiftWell, is like, how do we scale this kind of personalized development for each employee in an organization? How do we offer them support when they need it, where they need it, at any time of the day through the AI coach? And furthermore, how do we provide the actual important data and reporting to the managers to help them understand the most impactful activities they can do as a manager to make a difference?
I think it's so insightful that we break this down. You're breaking it down into like different domains, things like values, and recognizing also though that people don't have an equal emphasis on them all. It's not as if you just take 100% and divide it up evenly across these 6 domains. And it can be different from person to person. Somebody might be like, my values are incredibly strong. I really feel them very strongly. I want to make sure that the work I do it honors those values. Somebody else might be like, I don't even know what my values are. But let me tell you, my work format is really important to me right now. I need to have flexibility in my day because I might have a situation at home. So I love the fact that just recognizing that we all more or less have this holistic life and experience that we bring to work, but that we might have different areas of emphasis. And I suspect that can probably even change over time as well. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's something they again, it's like it's there, it's for them, they have the coach in their pocket essentially. They can come back and reevaluate where they are. So it's that continuous journey. And that's the whole point. That's what's missing, is the consistency and the ongoing development, and the ongoing development with life changes, because life happens, priorities change, work changes, we change jobs and so on. So it's like, it's really just for the individual to have that continuous actionable insights that they can apply that will actually make a difference, and not just some general data. Yeah.
And I'm hearing so many things that I really enjoy. So one is a focus on assessment and gathering data and really understanding people deeply. Another is AI. Obviously, it's growing and it's so powerful and it's changing so quickly. And then the other is around the actions that you take. And I know your co-founder John, he was participated in developing StrengthsFinder. So there's the assessment kind of side of the house, but also was an AI researcher at Amazon. So I wonder if you mentioned the AI coach and having something that's really there for you. It's more scalable. Like, how do you balance that interest in using AI to provide personalized and convenient access, but still retaining that human element and making sure that we've got sort of human performance? Because I think that that's something that we have a very careful eye on, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's really meant to partner with you. It's not meant to replace those conversations, the one-on-ones. It's really meant to partner with you on an individual level and the manager level. And what we're trying to get at is that what we want to happen is when you do come together with your manager for those one-on-one conversations, they're that much more impactful. And some actually changes. How often do we see people have, performance reviews, annual mid reviews, and it's the same thing and nothing changes. So you as an employee is not getting the support where this is where AI can help. It's not replacing that support necessarily. It's an additional partner for you to go to for when you want to, somebody to keep you accountable, right? That's what tools are for, to help us with consistency, accountability, nudging. No human in the world, unless it's your mom, partner, or significant other, right, is going to be like, hey, did you do this thing today? But that's where the tool comes in. And then at the same time, when again, like when you do have that conversation with your manager, you don't feel any type of way about it necessarily, because a lot of times what happens now is people will come in, neither side is prepared for the majority of conversations, right? So it's like the employee leaves a little bit defeated. They're like, okay, I'm not sure what I got out of that. The manager feels a little bit probably embarrassed because they didn't spend enough time, because they don't have that time to prepare for the conversation. And then you multiply by 20 people, that equals lack of performance, and then it goes back to the challenges we discussed. So I think this is where it helps you work on things that you can work on your own, having that support. But at the same time, when you do have that human face-to-face conversation, it is that much more impactful for both sides.
It's such a true point that, you end up having this conversation. And in some cases, like if you're a manager, like I'm as human as anybody. Every time you say that you need to have a performance conversation, you want to have like a 360 review, even if it's a really star performer, you're like, oh man, I'm so busy. Now I have to fill this out, or I have to have this conversation. And you really you feel almost, I don't want to say guilty, but you feel conflicted in the sense that you're like, there's nothing more important than developing other leaders, but then the realities of the business and the pacing. And a lot of times, we have to remember that if we're not running an efficient organization, if we haven't delegated properly, if we feel that much time pressure that we can't even develop our people, there's no way out of that cycle. We have to be able to elevate others so that we can sort of get some of our time back and do the things only we can do. But the bigger point I wanted to make is that you're really raising the fact that 72 hours after a 360 review, for example, there's almost no evidence that the conversation ever happened, because now the individual also gets pulled away in the day-to-day work. And so there's so much demands. And I don't think it's intentional by any stretch on either the part of the manager or the employee, but it's natural. So I'm really encouraged by Shipwell's understanding that the AI can sort of persist that, keep it alive, if I'm understanding that's a key part of it.
Absolutely. Again, it just, like we said, the world work sped up so much. Things have changed so much. Let's use the tools that are available and accessible to us to keep up with the change and with the speed of where the things are going. Otherwise, I mean, it's here to stay. So, and I think again, there's pros and cons to the technology in general. And I think as long as we use it intentionally, and as long as we don't just do it to replace those one-on-ones, I think that's where the discipline also comes in, right? It's a partner. And I think that's how we should view it. It's not there to replace us. It's a partner to help us be better in areas we already are in.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a good point. We've had a raft of digital tools come into the workplace for a long time now, and none of them have really fundamentally moved the needle. I can't remember a time when we're like, oh, thanks to this new technology, all of a sudden, people are feeling super supported or developed, or leadership is so much easier now. So, and I don't think AI is going to change that, because it's creating as many challenges as it's solving in other ways. But I think, just as you're teaching us, being able to use it as a tool to augment our capabilities. I love the fact that it is more conversant in a way when it acts like a coach. And if I don't have access to my manager because they're super busy, I can still make progress on my developmental goals. So if I want to, let's say I don't always speak up in meetings, I can use the agent to get some coaching on how to do that before my next meeting. I could have it ask me a question after the meeting. What opportunities did I see? What did I miss? And that's ways I can take accountability for my own development. And then still, that doesn't mean I'll never talk to my manager about, my progress or my blockers or anything, but it complements, I guess is what I'm saying.
And I spend quite a bit of time with young professionals as well. And so kind of really in my work. And what I've also noticed is that, especially for the new generations coming into the workplace, sometimes they don't even know what conversation, what, like, how to even ask a question. They feel uncomfortable. It's the first time, right, that they're having. So I think, again, sometimes it's easier to talk to an AI than a real human being. But by the time you get to the human being, at least you're prepared for that conversation. I think for especially the younger populations or the more, introverted individuals, I think this is really helpful because it's, there's certain things maybe you don't want to ask. You might feel a little embarrassed by the questions, or you might feel silly asking certain questions. But with AI, I think you have a lot more kind of flexibility in that sense, and I think that also helps a lot of the younger population. At least what I've seen, that they're really one of the first adapters to these kind of technologies because they almost feel more comfortable having that conversation and you really using it to then bring it into the conversation with their manager.
Yeah, and I think that when we see the research too, we see that a lot of times workers will turn to AI tools for almost management advice, for lack of a better term, in some cases because they don't trust that they're going to get anything but the company line from their managers. And that's obviously not something that we really want to see persist. But for the people who are listening, though, I think asking ourselves that question: can we confidently say that their people will come to them with these types of questions? Are you having really robust conversations, or is it pretty surface level? It could be a clue that we need to do more to turn up the volume on safety and trust, for example. But having said that, there's always going to be some nature of issues that you probably want to at least dry run with AI before you talk out loud to your manager. I see this, for example, with new managers who just get promoted into the role. And it's very hard to hold up your hand and say, hey, by the way, I don't know what I'm doing. You can't say that to your directs. You can't say that to your boss necessarily. So I think being able to work that out a little bit is pretty powerful. Well, I think that if we think about it this way too, you've had so much experience in your consulting work. You've got your own podcast, which is amazing. You've had all this different types of experience. But if you were to really distill it down, like what are some things that we as leaders really need to understand about creating performance gains and improvements that really last, right? And also doing it not at the expense of well-being, but can we really, Elena, have our cake and eat it too?
Yeah, I think there's three things that come to mind. The first one is the most important one is model the behavior you want to see. I think that is the biggest thing for managers, for leaders. And that's the hardest. And I mean, I'm still learning myself all the time. That's the hardest one because um, because we have to walk the talk. I mean, we have to, what is it? Yeah, walk the talk, and I think the best way to help people grow, especially if you want to develop further leaders in your team, is to show them what good leadership is like. Model that behavior, I think, is number one, right? Number two, understanding that when it comes to performance, when it comes to assessments, when it comes to career development, there's no one size fits all. There's one size fits one. And I think just remembering that will help us really understand and just remind us that that conversation with your team member is going to be different from every person. You have to prepare it for it very differently. And the last third part is remembering that 15 to 20 minutes of quality conversations more often will actually save you a lot more time in the long term. So don't wait to have that conversation once a quarter. Don't avoid the difficult conversations. Don't avoid the difficult feedback you must give to the person, because I think that will definitely save you a lot of time, money, energy, and just potential conflict in the future. So these are my three things. Model the behavior. It's one size fits one, not one size fits all. And 15 to 20 minutes of your time is going to be worth your while, and for your team as well.
I love it. And stop putting band-aids on broken legs. That one
Yeah,
stuck with
stop.
me too.
Stop putting. That's the biggest one probably as well. Yeah,
Oh
put
my
that on
goodness.
right on cherry on top.
Yeah, there it is. Cherry on top. I love it. Well, I tell you what, Elena, I like to put another cherry on top, which is a fun trivia segment that I like to do. At least I think it's fun. We're going to find out how we do. This is a segment that I love to call Are We Smarter Than AI? We're going to have AI ask us a question. Now, I saw that you're the co author of a book called The Rough Guide to Awesome Leadership. And I thought, man, I like awesome things. So we're just going to get a trivia question now about awesome things. So here it is. Which of the following awesome things, oh my gosh, is considered the largest single living organism on Earth by mass? Is it A, the General Sherman giant sequoia tree, B, the Great Barrier Reef coral system, or C, a massive underground fungus in Oregon? Oh my gosh. So we got a tree, the barrier reef, or an underground fungus, A, B, or C?
I will do B.
We're going to go with B. Coral. Yeah, the barrier reef is definitely massive. It's got to be bigger, right? So, audience, if you're playing along at home, we're looking for the largest single living organism on Earth by mass. Is it the sequoia tree, the coral system, or massive underground function? We're going with B. And the answer is, it's a great guess, but it's actually C, an underground fungus in Oregon. Wow. How about
Wow.
that?
All right, learn something
Well,
new.
hey, we learned something new. And don't put a Band-Aid on a giant underground fungus either. It would be my advice. But I have a much more sensical question for you, Elena. Where can my listeners go to learn more about you and about ShiftWell?
Sure. So you can just find me on my LinkedIn, Elena Agaragimova. And you can also follow a LinkedIn page, which is just shiftwell.ai.
I love it. Listeners, I'm going to have those links for you in the show notes. You're only one click away from getting in touch with Elena, learning more about ShiftWell. Elena, it's been great chatting with you. I really appreciate it. I loved having you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to my leader listeners, thank you as well for investing in yourself, getting great tips from Elena, and really trying to double down on all those great things that we need to be doing for our teams, for our people, and for ourselves. I want to hear your takeaways. If you've got them, use the hashtag #LeadThePeople on LinkedIn, or you can reach out directly to me and just let me know. I'd love to hear what's resonating with you most. And while you're at it, if you got 30 seconds, just leave a 5-star rating on Spotify or whatever podcast platform you're listening to. You can just really have a great time with that and help me attract other amazing guests like Elena. Thank you so much again. And that's it for today's show. So with that, don't just manage the business when you can lead the people.